You point at a tennis ball across the room, and your dog is moving before your arm even comes down. Now, try that exact same point on a chimpanzee, one of the smartest creatures alive, an animal that shares almost all of your DNA. It looks at your finger, then it looks back at you, a little confused, like you've just done something faintly rude. Here's the strange part. Your dog is not smarter than that chimp. Not even close. So, how does the dumber animal end up being the one that reads you? We like to think we tamed dogs the way you'd tame anything, with patience, and food, and rules. But what if it's closer to say, we built them? Today, let's step into a question that sounds simple, and really isn't. Why does a dog read you better than our closest living relative ever could? The answer isn't training, and it isn't even raw intelligence. It's something stranger. And we did most of it without noticing. Before we get to the how, we have to throw out the obvious answer. The obvious answer is that dogs are clever and chimps just aren't clever about us. But that's not what the science says. Put a chimp and a dog side by side on a puzzle about the physical world, the kind with levers and tools and hidden mechanics, and the chimp wins. Easily. Where the dog pulls ahead is one narrow, specific skill, reading what a human wants. And that, it turns out, is a completely different thing from being smart. Back in 2002, a researcher named Brian Hare ran a now famous version of this exact test and published it in the journal Science. The setup is almost insultingly simple. You hide a treat under one of two cups. Then, you point at the right one. A dog follows your point straight to the food, pretty much every single time. The chimp, with all that raw brain power, mostly just guesses. And Hare's conclusion was the interesting bit. Dogs weren't born knowing this, and they didn't exactly go to school for it. They picked it up as a whole species during the long, slow business of becoming dogs, which leaves us with a slightly uncomfortable question. What on earth happened during that process? And this is where it gets genuinely weird. To answer that, you have to leave the dogs behind and fly to Siberia. In 1959, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev started an experiment that is still running today, just outside Novosibirsk, carried on for decades by his colleague, Lyudmila Trut. They took ordinary half-wild farm foxes and bred them for one single trait. Not intelligence, not obedience, just friendliness. Every generation, they kept only the foxes that were calmest and least afraid of people, and let those ones have the babies. That was the entire rule. And within a few decades, they had foxes that wagged their tails, whimpered for attention, and licked their keepers' hands like puppies. But here's the part that genuinely gets me. When Brian Hare later tested those friendly foxes in a study from 2005, he found they had accidentally gotten good at reading human gestures too, following points, checking faces. Nobody trained them to do any of it. It just came along for the ride, bundled up with the friendliness, like a free gift taped to the side of the box. If that sounds like a one-off fluke, the puppies say otherwise. In 2021, a team led by Emily Bray and Evan McLean tested puppies that were only about 8 weeks old, animals that had barely spent any real time around humans yet. And those puppies could already follow a human point. Even better, when the researchers crunched the numbers, more than 40% of how good each puppy was came straight down to its genetics. That number didn't come from lessons. It was already sitting there, loaded and ready, before the puppy had the faintest idea what a human even was. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds a little cold, like we engineered ourselves a clever little servant. But it goes much deeper than skill. And this is the part that honestly broke my brain a bit. In 2015, a Japanese team, led by Miho Nagasawa and Takafumi Kikusui, published something remarkable, again in Science. When you and your dog look into each other's eyes, both of you get a quiet surge of oxytocin, the same bonding hormone that floods a mother and her newborn baby. And it's a loop. Your gaze raises the dog's oxytocin. The dog's gaze raises yours. And round it goes. Wolves don't do this. Even wolves raised in human homes don't do this. Somewhere in the process of becoming dogs, they didn't just learn to read us. They wired themselves straight into the chemical circuit we use to love our own children. So, let's go back to that question we started with. Why does a dog understand you better than a chimp does? Maybe understand was the wrong word all along. The chimp isn't failing the test. It's just not built around you. It has its own life, its own politics, a whole world that has nothing to do with what your finger is pointing at. The dog is different because of a deal that got struck thousands of years ago, one that neither side ever really signed. We kept the friendly ones, and the friendly ones, completely by accident, were also the ones who watched us the closest. Now, I should be honest here, because the science is honest about it too. It isn't fully settled. Some researchers like Monique Udell have shown that wolves given enough patient-human contact can learn to read us surprisingly well, so it's not magic. And it's not purely genes. But the head start your dog is born with is very real. Here's the thing that stays with me. We like to think of ourselves as the ones doing the loving. We feed them, we name them, we let them up onto the couch. But the eye contact runs both ways, and so does the chemistry. When your dog stops on a walk and looks up at you for no real reason at all, it's reaching for something a wolf cannot reach for, and a chimp simply won't. And we made that. Not on purpose, not with any grand plan, just by being a little kinder to the gentlest animals in the room over and over for 10,000 years until one of them looked back and never looked away. We didn't find a best friend. We slowly, accidentally, grew one, which does make you wonder, what else has been quietly watching us this whole time, waiting for us to be a little kinder? And that should humble us. Stay curious. If you want to keep stepping into other minds with me, you know where the button is.